So I'm going to do a little section on bringing about personal change, how to change yourself. Look at this quote here: forged in the trenches of camp, hardened by the pressures of competition. Leaders aren't born, leaders are built. I think then it says the work is worth it. I think it's important to realize that who you want to become one day needs work. It's not just going to happen by itself. So here are a few very interesting things how to bring about personal change.
I recently read Coming Alive by Barry Michaels and Phil Stutz. If you look around today, you'll see many people living limited, joyless lives and may attribute it to the daily grind. But that's not the reason people are gloomy and uninspired. Part X is the reason. Part X lives in every one of us. It's a voice that tells us we're not good enough or that life is meaningless. It's our worst critic, our source of pessimism, our enabler of indulgences, and the amplifier of hurt. This destructive force inside of us feeds on our lethargy. When we have an aspiration, it gradually erects a huge psychological wall in front of it and spray paints impossible on the wall in huge graffiti-style letters. Part X's primary goal is to keep you and I down and prevent us from growing. It's our self-improvement villain, and it wants to exert dominance over our lives. But here's the twist. We need it. Without Part X, we wouldn't grow. Just as a hero in a story needs a worthy villain to rise up and bring forth their best selves to defeat that villain, Part X is a constant presence in our lives and helps us continuously grow and avoid getting complacent, because we human beings love to get complacent. Each time we defeat Part X, we grow stronger, but Part X always returns because we can never kill it. We can just temporarily kick it out of our lives. To temporarily defeat Part X, we must first expose it and bring it to the surface. As a character in the movie The Usual Suspects put it, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. To lure Part X into the open, where you can see it and feel it, think of something you crave after a hard day's work. It might be food, alcohol, screen time, games, or gambling. Think about that craving until it becomes your sole focus, until you feel like you must have it. That's Part X convincing you you can't be satisfied without it. One of Part X's dirtiest tricks is using the perfectly rational idea that the only way to regain energy is to sit around and do nothing. But with some simple reflection in your life, you realize that the quickest way you regain energy in the past is not by lounging around, but by getting actively engaged in a conversation, a workout, or a creative project. This is because humans gain energy by being plugged in and fully engaged in the world around them, and not by withdrawing from it. Problem is, to get actively engaged, you need a bit of energy. Think of it like waking up in the morning, all groggy and tired, and needing just enough energy to plug in a bright blue light into the wall. If you manage to get that light plugged in, your eyes will be flooded with blue light, and you'll create a neurochemical reaction in your brain, and you'll suddenly have the motivation to get your day started. The vortex is a tool that will give you just enough energy to get curious and engaged in a conversation, a workout, or project, and plug yourself into a boundless source of energy. The next time you have an irresistible craving, or an unwillingness to engage with the world, think, this is Part X trying to keep me down, and compel you to fight back to reclaim control of your life. I recently read Triggers: Creating Behavior That Lasts, Becoming the Person You Want to Be, by Marshall Goldsmith. Goldsmith says, if we do not create and control our environment creates and controls us, and turns us into someone we do not recognize. Whether you realize it or not, your environment is by far the most important factor that determines whether you'll succeed or fail implementing a new behavior, like trying to exercise every day, or banishing an old behavior, like getting angry or confrontational in work meetings. Your environment is full of triggers that zap your will and guide your behavior in subtle ways. You may want to eat healthy, but when you're triggered by a series of frustrating emails and a real-time chart that shows your stocks losing value by the second, makes you opt for the leftover pizza in the fridge at lunch instead of the salad you were going to prepare. You may want to be more patient with your child, but when you're triggered by a loud TV in the background, a messy house, and a phone that keeps buzzing with notifications, it's nearly impossible to be present, patient, and playful with your child. The first step to creating behavior change that lasts, like eating healthier or being more patient with people you love, is to adopt the extreme belief that your environment is the sole reason for everything you do. Now, your environment may not be the only reason you do what you do, but temporarily adopting this belief is an excellent way to start changing your behavior. With this belief in mind, it's clear that the only way you can change your behavior is to eliminate or anticipate counterproductive triggers in your environment, and then create new productive triggers in your environment. Let's see how this works by taking a negative habit that's worth changing, like arguing with your partner and saying things you later regret. First, think back to recent arguments you've had and what environmental forces, aka triggers, that may have led to the argument. Now, the obvious trigger is your partner telling you to do something you promised to do with a condescending tone. But upon deeper reflection, you may realize that there were other, more subtle triggers in your environment, which all but ensured you would respond in a hostile way to almost anything your partner said. One trigger might be listening to news on the radio or listening to a political podcast, which slowly deteriorates your positive mood. And lastly, upon entering your house, you checked your email on your phone and became aware of more problems at work, which put you in a confrontational state of mind. Once you identify counterproductive environmental triggers, systematically approach each of those triggers in one of two ways. First, eliminate triggers you can control. In this example, you could delete all political podcasts from your subscription feed. Then, you could keep your phone in the glove compartment of your vehicle until after you catch up with your partner and cook dinner, so you're less inclined to check email after work. After actively trying to eliminate triggers you can control, you then must anticipate and mentally prepare for triggers you can't eliminate. This includes drivers on the road. Anticipating and preparing is like checking the weather forecast in the morning to know how you should approach the day. By pausing to see that there's rain in the forecast, you can be equipped with an umbrella and rain jacket so you don't get soaked on the way to your car. Likewise, if you know you're going to encounter people or situations or temptations that trigger you to act in counterproductive ways, you need to prepare for those triggers and choose how you're going to respond in advance. It's helpful each morning to remind yourself of the behavior you're trying to change now that you've done your best to eliminate or anticipate counterproductive triggers. It's time to create productive triggers. When you're trying to create or preserve all types of positive behaviors, you must load your environment with productive triggers to the point where you almost feel overwhelmed by them. Here's a few ways to do that. First, strategically place objects throughout your environment. If you wanted to create a new strength training behavior, you could keep a grip strengthening device on your kitchen counter and push-up handles in the middle of your living room. Then you could put keywords that trigger you to think of working out on post-it notes and place them on your fridge, your bathroom mirror, your bedroom door, and your office desk. A second way to load up your environment with productive triggers is to multiply your digital reminders. This includes reminder app notifications, calendar event notifications, or phone alarms during the day. Also includes recurring emails to yourself with the behavior you want to change, or SMS reminders on your phone. I personally use a service called AskMeEvery.com that sends me a pre-programmed text message at specific times during the day. And the last way to load up your environment with productive triggers is to surround yourself with people, virtually or in person, who promote and praise the behavior you're striving for. If you wanted to work out more, start a group chat with the people you know who value fitness and encourage them to post images of their workouts or text messages that detail the number of sets of an exercise they just completed. If you can eliminate or anticipate counterproductive triggers and create productive triggers, you're well on your way to changing your behavior. But if you want a behavior change that lasts, you need a method that consistently pulls you away from the gravitational force of your old habits. Adult behavior change is one of the hardest endeavors in life. As an adult, you have so many old habits and social connections pulling at you and insisting you maintain the status quo. When you slip up and fail to execute your new behavior, you'll quickly fall back into your old ways. But not if you embrace active questioning. When you develop an active questioning nighttime ritual, you gradually and consistently thrust yourself towards the person you want to be and counteract the gravitational force of your old habits. Here's how active questioning works. Before you go to sleep each night, answer a question about your desired behavior that starts with the phrase, "Did I do my best to?" Like, did I do my best to work out today? When measuring and evaluating a new behavior, most people ask themselves passive questions, like, did I work out today? But when you ask passive questions, you're more inclined to make excuses for inaction. Like, I didn't work out because the gym was closed, or I didn't work out because I had to work late. But when you start asking yourself active questions, like, did I do my best to work out today? You suddenly hold yourself accountable and feel responsible for inaction. Because if the gym was closed or you had to stay late at work, you could have completed a few push-ups before bed, if you were doing your best. The more you ask yourself active questions, the more inclined you are to improve your change strategy, instead of giving up when your initial strategy isn't working. In other words, you transition from expecting change to happen to making it happen. When you develop an active questioning nighttime ritual, you'll naturally start wondering, am I doing my best throughout the day? And find ways to execute your behavior change despite how busy or tired you feel. In the end, assume your environment is dictating your behavior and eliminate or anticipate counterproductive triggers that support behaviors you want to change. Then, create productive environmental triggers to guide you towards the person you want to be. After optimizing your environment, ask yourself active behavior questions every night that start with the phrase, "Did I do my best too?" That was the core message that I gathered from Triggers by Marshall Goldsmith. This book is one of my favorite behavior change books. I highly recommend it.
When we talk about changing people the quickest and the most drastically, you probably talk about the most elite divisions in the military. No other place on earth has so much pressure on someone physically as the military, mentally as the military, or emotionally as the military. People obviously being pushed to the limit physically, mentally in decision making, and emotionally with death all around you. So here it's fascinating to hear how they change people and get about the change which is probably the most drastic and fastest in any area of life. And that's why many companies love employing people who are top achievers in the military.
So what does it take to be a Royal Marine? Well, given that I spent 32 years as one, I guess I'm in a good position to know. My name's Major Scotty Mills and I became the highest ranking black officer in the history of the Royal Marines. During my time in service, I fought in 4 war zones before taking responsibility for the fitness and performance of all 6,500 of UK Green Berets. The Royal Marines have shaped and defined my life. When a recruit comes in, much like a young man like me who has got this aspiration to earn their Green Beret, I can tell you that what we're looking for is not the finished article. We're not expecting them to be trained Marines. We're not looking for Olympic champions or World Cup winners. We're looking for team players who have got strong values and qualities who will never, ever give in. From the youngest cadet all the way up to the oldest veteran, and everybody that's served within that 358-year history of the Marines, they'll instantly be able to tell you about our commando values: courage, determination, unselfishness, and cheerfulness, especially in the face of adversity. And why can they do that? Well, the Marines very skillfully, but not very subtly, put you in situations where you have to demonstrate these values every day. They have these words on a poster on a wall every 2 yards when you go down to Lympstone. And what they do is they take these words off a poster on the wall and they place them within you, and it becomes a way of life. They help you to grow every single day. They take you to the limit of what you thought was possible. And then what they ask you to do is to take one more step forwards, climb 1 more metre higher, row 1 more oar stroke. They make you cold and wet and tired and hungry. They'll give you something to do that you can't do on your own. And what they expect to see from you is for you to live those values every day. The Marines save the hardest for last. In the last couple of weeks, you have to do the 4 commando tests. The 9-mile speed march, carrying all your kit and equipment. You've got to pass it as a squad, as a team. The second test is the Tarzan and the assault course. 2 assault courses together. The Tarzan course 30 feet up in the trees. No safety equipment. If you fall out the trees, it's just one of those bad days at the office. The third one is the endurance course, 2.5 miles of underwater tunnels with such obstacles known as the Sheep Dip and the Crocodile Pit, Peter's Pool. And the final one is the world famous Royal Marines 30-mile march across the entirety of Dartmoor, where once again you've got to come in as a team. The Marines ask you at the end of the longest and hardest training in the world to complete all those 4 commando tests, which are on consecutive days. It's a true team effort where your collective performance raises so much higher than what any one individual can do. And when you realise that, you become part of a team where you stand side by side like a ring of steel. At the end of the longest and hardest training in the world, the Royal Marines give you a weekend off. It's really nice, isn't it? And when you go home for the weekend, you realise that what you've just done is effectively only a job interview. So now you're going to deploy on operations around the globe, jungles and deserts and mountains. Coldest I've ever been in is minus 76 degrees Celsius with the wind chill. That is chilly. They put you in situations where you expect the unexpected. They're always throwing spanners in the work in training. The Marines talk about train hard and fight easy, where you leave no stone unturned so that when it comes to the crunch, and it always comes to the crunch, you've been there before, you've done the training, you start getting the little things right, you live in your values, you start to get some of the bigger things right, and some of that magic starts to happen. When you work with such a force like the Royal Marines, you get to a point where you believe anything is possible. Well, that grows your confidence, not just as an individual, but as a team. And that belief helps you to replace something like fear. I've sometimes heard Royal Marines being described as elite. You won't hear any Royal Marine use that word, but they are special in my mind. Over the 358-year history, the Royal Marines, both on operations and deployments around the globe, have excelled. We've got a reputation that speaks for itself. The Royal Marines like to think of themselves as a thinking man soldier. The perception when you meet a Marine is that there'll be someone who's in your face, shouting, screaming, doing a million press-ups, flexing his biceps. Well, it's a 180-degree polar opposite from that. When we do an action, during our training or otherwise, we continually feed back, always thinking about how we can improve. And it's those little details that make the difference between the Royal Marines and some of the other forces that I've worked alongside. Do you know that no Royal Marine, past or present, has ever judged me on the colour of my skin, my background, or where I'm from? But what they will judge me on is what I do and how I do it every single day. It's the very best of what I've seen, where we take young people and give them an opportunity to be able to demonstrate and unlock this potential to be ordinary people that get to do some extraordinary things.
I recently read The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. A mountain stands between you and your best self. Just as a mountain is formed by 2 sections of Earth colliding, your internal mountain is formed by a conscious and unconscious need colliding. Maybe you've committed to changing your diet but ended up in the Wendy's drive-thru days later. Or vowed to be your own boss, but keep forgetting to work on that one promising business idea you have. We all do this. We say we want to change, but we unconsciously fear change and sabotage our change efforts. The longer we allow this inner conflict to persist, the larger the mountain inside of us gets. And if we never face our mountain, change is forced upon us. If we resist changing our diet or lifestyle, we'll get hit with a severe change in the form of a terminal illness. If we resist professional change, we'll likely be forced out of a job or business, which will be worse than any change we could have initiated. The key is not to wait around for change to happen, and instead embrace it. The objective of life, beyond meeting our basic survival needs, is to change and conquer our internal mountains so we can become the best versions of ourselves. Start conquering an internal mountain standing between you and your best self by going somewhere you can relax and reflect on the question, what change do I feel the most resistance to doing? As you think of answers, notice which potential change produces the greatest tension in your body. That tension may be stemming from a painful association to change that you formed earlier in life. For instance, you may want to leave your current job to find more fulfilling work, but you feel intense resistance to doing so. When you focus on that resistance, it might bring you back to a time that you lost your job. The uncertainty and stress of that experience forged a belief that you should hold on to any job you get, no matter how miserable you are in that job. Beliefs forged by past pain act as invisible weights, pulling you back down to the base of your mountain. You must release those weights by going back to the painful experience and imagine helping your younger self gain a new perspective and process the painful emotions that led to a limiting belief. Close your eyes and imagine being transported back to the painful experience and sitting next to your past self at the moment of peak emotional pain. With the benefit of being months or years removed from that experience, your current self can reassure your younger self that things will get better. In fact, some good things will actually come from the experience in the form of new insights, opportunities, and relationships. This reassurance allows your younger self to fully accept what they're experiencing and let it pass through them, like rainwater flowing through a duct, unencumbered. Now, you may cry or sweat during this experience, because as Brianna Weiss says, emotions are physical. When not felt properly, they become embodied and literally stuck in our bodies, and we need to flush them out. For this reason, I found the best time to explore my resistance to change and revisit painful experiences is during physical exercise. I like to close my eyes while riding a stationary bike, and as I sweat, I imagine my past self releasing and letting go of any negative feelings towards the experience that led to belief that's holding me back today. Without the weight of limiting beliefs holding you back from the change you want to make, it's now time to formulate a plan to move up your mountain. If you turn this highest potential future self visualization into a daily habit, you will feel like you're gradually merging with your future self, which will allow you to have more confidence to step into the unknown and navigate change. Which brings us to the last step. Maintain momentum up the mountain with micro shifts. Our minds play nasty tricks on us. When we declare a positive change, we feel great, but the instant we attempt change, we feel terrible. The discomfort of change is not a sign that we are doing something wrong, but that we are doing something unfamiliar. Micro shifts allow us to gradually inch into an unfamiliar territory, which prevents us from freaking out and running back to our old ways. Brianna Weiss says, a micro shift is changing what you eat for one part of one meal just one time. Then it's doing that a second time and a third. Before you realize what's happening, you've adopted a pattern of behavior. When you drift back to old change avoidance habits, such as aimlessly scrolling through social media to distract yourself, make a 3-second shift away from that behavior and toward the change you're resisting. Then another, and another. These small actions should take almost no effort, and each of these micro shifts should seem insignificant to an outside observer. But over time, these micro shifts will compound and move you far beyond your comfort zone. At some point you realize this and be tempted to go back to your old life. But when this happens, consciously commit to letting your old self die, along with any habits and relationships that hold you back. And trust that those who were truly meant for you will join you in your new life. In the end, Brianna Weiss says, the mountain that stands in front of you is the calling of your life, your purpose for being here, and your path finally made clear. One day, this mountain will be behind you, but who you become in the process of getting over it will stay with you always. That was the core message that I gathered from The Mountain Is You by Brianna Weiss.